Hi, my name's Justin. I'm going to be talking to you today about coffee sourcing, but in particular about one sort of circumstance that goes on with our partners in Brazil. We've been working with them pretty heavily now for the past 3 years, and yeah, been really trying to get involved. And so today, we're more or less sort of relaying a bit of a message about what they're going through, in particular to the challenges of providing specialty organic coffee, and yeah, more or less try to sort of relay these informations to you. So this is all about coffee sourcing, but in particular a more specific case study. Sorry guys. Yeah, so why don't we get rolling a bit? Chris, you want to bring up a few screens here? We'll get in sync soon. So that's basically what I was sort of addressing. This is Fazenda Ambiental Fortaleza. In the next photo, you can see a beautiful sort of landscape here of one of the organic farms that basically where they're producing their coffee in basically a natural environment here. And yeah, this is basically an ideal situation for growing coffee. Wherever it is in the world, it should be in a natural shaded area, cool environment, and yeah, so basically the slow production of ripe coffee cherries is able to attain maximum sweetness. The next photo here is basically what I was introduced to with the concept of, why are we here? Well, that's why we're here. I skipped that one already. Let's go on to the next one. Basically, yeah, when I was growing up, my uncle used to sort of talk about a lot of organic coffee farming, specifically in Australia, as rape and pillage. He called it this because basically without, fertilizing the soil or maintaining the land, this is basically what you'll end up with if you're farming in a more conventional way. You're just really ripping out all the minerals and not really replacing anything. The idea of proper, organic or biodynamic farming is what we used to call it, would also resolve in sort of this, what is this? Is like this Steiner or the horn. He's burying the horns of the slaughtered cows, which it's all very well and good, but this is something that's sort of in the opposite scale of what we would sort of have in standard production. This is one farmer taking care of everything on his land, maintaining this idealistic approach in very, very small scale. So, in terms of trying to talk about organics here, I think it's really important to address the amount of logos you have throughout the world in terms of, especially specifically to coffee. We're going to just stream through a bunch here. We've got Fair Trade Certified, we've got Fair Trade, we've got Fair Trade Federation, and then we've got Fair Trade. Lots of different logos for different places. USDA Organic, Bio, Agricultura Biologica, Bio Stars, and Bio Swiss. These are all sort of basically approaching this certification of making sure that the farmers have, not used any chemical processing and basically separated all their products from any chemicals. The next two, basically Rainforest Alliance and the UTZ Certified, try to sort of get a little more engaged with the practice of what's happening at the farm. So, there's certain quotas about sort of being, part of the Rainforest Alliance, UTZ certification, sort of crossing over responsible farming practices and fair trade practices. And then, other ones are probably more sort of, local to, there's a whole list of them basically. I know of some of them, others I'm not as familiar with. With this whole speech today, we're going to be approaching a little bit more what we consider to be a direct trade or relationship sort of idea. I think the people who really moved forward with this were happening in the States 10, 15 years ago. They were getting out there, counterculture were sort of getting out to their farmers and making sure they were paid more for the higher quality product. So we're intelligentsia, Stumptown, and sort of certain ways of dealing in direct trade was more or less agreed. And there's certification, there's logos out there, but generally what direct trade's really trying to do is approach a much more stronger relationship with your coffee producers, because most of us aren't growing coffee, we're sourcing it from places close to the equator, so it requires visitation, and at least there's a price for quality, and it's around about 25% more than the fair trade price. So any of these specialty coffees that really actually have defined characteristics, not to go too much into the whole specialty coffee thing, but the varying levels of quality do vary a lot in terms of pricing, so that's part of the model with the direct trade idea. Yeah, this is our logo. Yeah, we're still talking to the lawyers. Yes, so Fazenda Ambiental Fortaleza. Might as well get right into it here, if I can just, yeah. So we're talking about the 5 challenges here. 5 challenges that are associated with organic farming and yeah, sustainable farming practices, both ecologically and economically. First of all is the lack of know-how. There's basically been untraining of coffee production in Brazil. The way they produce coffee is extremely mechanized, industrialized. The single biggest coffee producing nation in the world. So you have this kind of coffee farming. It's out there open in the fields. This is a nice cloudy, misty day. Unfortunately, we couldn't get a photo with like sun beaming down on this coffee, so it's like ripening in a really sort of rapid rate. A lot of fertilizers get used because of this rapid ripening, and then basically these machines are harvesting coffee cherry from, yeah. Yeah, so they, this is bringing down the price of the coffee and really ingraining people in the idea that organic production is basically impossible to achieve. Also, it's really hard to find agronomists with holistic approaches, and by that I mean, you know, producing coffee, you know, mulching, feeding the chickens, great knitwear, all these things is like really hard to find now that the mechanization of all these practices are being more or less prioritized. The second problem, of course, is yield. Probably the main reason why anyone would make sure they fertilize their coffee or, yeah, really sort of invest in monocultures is that your yield increases dramatically. Super production, for instance, isn't possible with organic coffee. You've got one farmer here, one of the farmers we deal with, Celcio, and his wife Gertrudis is not in the photo there, but they're basically hand-picking all their coffee. It's impossible to run these machines, which would be stripping down the trees so much without sort of using a whole lot of chemicals. These guys aren't actually full certified organic, but they're approaching to a point where their farm is slowly becoming completely organic. So just to outline the differences between sustainable farming and then full organic production there. And basically, yeah, because of this, you're achieving pretty much 50% less yield than regular coffee production. So it makes it really hard to fit the volume. The third point in the challenges of coffee is the cost. The biggest cost pretty much being manpower to basically pick organic coffee by hand and to maintain the farm is you need, it ends all up being approximately 3 times more expensive than conventional farming production. As we see the multiplication there, nice photo. And of course, yeah, a typical organic farm requires 12 minimum wage employees to run it. This photo only has 8, sorry about that, but basically these wages have to be paid throughout the year. In a place like Brazil, you've probably got one of the few places in the world that has a regular sort of award wage or minimum wage for, you know, farming because of the amount of I guess, businesses in it and them approaching a much more sort of regulated economy. Yeah, so the production of organic coffee is not scalable. So, like most business models, you can start up a sort of a business model that can be, repeated and then sort of grown from that one structure. But in order to produce organic coffee in this way, and we'll go into it a little bit more later, just like the actual, what I mean by all the processes of working out how to achieve this business model, you start to realize the only way to do it is to form partnerships with other people who can actually manage their own business, which is sort of like, I guess it's a great model as well because everyone gets a little bit more hand in the business, but that deters a lot of big investment for this kind of coffee production. And basically the scalability, just to be relying on organic coffee, it's important to diversify crops. But once again, I think there's a few more points on that later in the speech. But so in the end, when we're sort of talking about this quality coffee or specialty coffee, there is actually, essentially at this point in time, no market for organic, I should say, specialty coffee. So that becomes a little bit of a problem. Without quality, there are no incentives for increased pricing. So what we're saying here is, there's a little joke here talking about the perception that, an organic coffee will instantly just taste better than regular coffee. No one can really tell the difference, and often it's probably not as good if someone was buying that same coffee for the same price. I'm going to reword that, sorry. There's no incentive for increased pricing for organic coffee. So that same organic coffee for the same price is probably going to be a much lower quality because it should actually cost more to produce. So people are just sort of not willing to necessarily pay. And when I mean a lot more, we're talking more like 3 times the price for the same kind of yield for this organic product. And also this increased pricing is also the certification that we went through earlier on. It's so much certification has to go into exporting something from another country, continent. You've got the farm that needs certification. You've got the shipping, and then basically transport into the country, and of course the roastery. All steps of the way have to be paid into the certification to keep that certified product, which makes it very hard for coffee because it's not just grown in Brandenburg, it's grown very far away. So it's like a perpetual sort of boulder, just getting bigger and bigger. So Tommy says, you're ready to pay the true cost of organic coffee. So, good old Tommy. So to elaborate on some of these costs I've just talked about, maybe it's a little bit sort of, it's just a little bit sort of going out of my way to make these points. This is the case study that really we want to present. This is one of our farmers. One of the farmers that basically is, not necessarily relying on the production of coffee in their farm. Sylvia Barreto was handed down her farm to her about, was it 6-7 years ago, or is it more like, they sort of got out of Brazil, were living in the States for a while, and then decided to return back to the country life, but of course had, I guess, enough means, income to start to test out a few things. So we're going to talk a little bit about what she has come up with and what she's found in terms of actual producing sustainable quality organic coffee. There's 2 approaches that she's come up with. There's the first one, which is active organic. Active organic is pictured here with different crops growing in the same field. This means coffee grown in between bananas, fruit trees, sugar cane somewhere. Actually, sugar cane is probably not the best thing to grow in between things, but there's a lot of it in Brazil. But yeah, basically there's this idea of active organic, which means that you're fertilizing and maintaining the soil quality. And then there's, the golden unicorn, and the way that things would be great if they just coexisted, but passive organic is a principle that, like, I guess like places in the world manage this much better because they're much more true to the natural environment of coffee. Coffee Arabica is probably pretty much what we're talking about here. Passive organic would mean that you can grow coffee without refertilizing the soil or finding natural organic fertilizers to plant, that basically you have a sustainable, self-regulating ecosystem. I think we've got a video coming up now. Is that right?
This is our active
Yeah.
organic coffee, and we've been doing organic since 2002, and we brought diversity by having the banana culture as a second crop plus the coffee. But 2 years ago, we started planting between the rows of coffee, either for other crops like beans, cassava, corn, or for green fertilization for increase the organic matter and replace grass that is aggressive to the coffee to cultures that are good for the coffee. So we have here painço, we have nabo forrageiro, we have the sunflower, we encourage some native species of different weeds. And with this, we increase the fertilization, it's green fertilization, plus we preserve the humidity of the soil because these are uncertain times in which the weather is behaving strangely, and we have 40 days of dry weather in January, which is our rain month. We also are planting trees to encourage more shade. And we are very happy with the results of the green fertilization and the plants between the rows.
Yeah, so short little spiel about how she's managing to get a sort of functional active organic system. So in her process, she's been doing this for like years now, and I think the first year was just about learning the language of what the farmers were, how the farmers were operating. No sort of investment in anything, but just to understand what the situation is in Brazil right now for farmers, particularly coffee or any other product, and how things are run. The second point was just basically the way you would actually farm an organic farm is a lot different. You've got basically different tools, very simple sort of ideas, very simple machinery that should be used in order to maintain a sustainable organic farm that's, so you've got cart-drawn sort of plowing and stuff like that. So, and then of course, the third point is to understand how this actually applies to coffee. I guess the thing here is basically more research has probably been done in sustainable organic sort of vegetables and whatnot, stuff that we grow here. Whereas, once again, this kind of monoculture concentration of productivity in Brazil is a little bit sort of taking coffee a very far way away from a natural organic sort of growing method. You got the tractor photo there? Yeah, you can't use tractors, This guy's out of a job. Anyway, I think we're on to the next model now, which is passive organic.
This is our passive organic coffee at Fazenda Ambiental Fortaleza. Coffee in the shade, which is very unusual in Brazil. Brazil, we cultivate coffee in the sunny areas for higher production. We have a lower production, it's true, but we have much lower costs. We don't spray, we don't fertilize, we use the forest soil, and the plants are very healthy, and they are much more resistant to dry weather. And so we have lower cost, bigger health, and very good quality of the beans. And we experiment having different areas with different varieties of coffee for us to, for Felipe to taste and evaluate the high quality of the taste of the coffee, of the beverage. So this is our experimentation between two different ways of managing coffee.
Yeah, so, yeah, basically an ideal situation, she's right, you don't actually have the extra added costs, but you need to have the land and the ecosystem, which is far and far becoming a diminished resource in Brazil. This guy here, João Pereira Lima, can never get that vowel right in Portuguese, but he was a man who basically he travelled from Brazil, saw some different systems happening in other places throughout the world, and realised what was happening in Brazil. The deforestation was becoming quite rampant, and he could see the land basically starting to diminish around him. So he went out and did a bit of research. I think we can go to the next photo here. It's like, this is, I didn't have the photo of the place where he visited in, was it Honduras? But this is basically an Inca ruin, I think they're called, in Peru, just outside of Cuzco. But that's actually a farming laboratory for the Incas. Basically, they were testing here what altitude and what species grow well together. Sorry, altitude, I should say, what kind of level of sun and sort of dampness. Yeah, as you can see, there's many different mezzanines here, so it's more or less like a science, a lab for, how do you say, organically, genetically modifying stuff. I'm not sure. But yeah, this is something that he learned that's been going around with the history of like people for a very long time, and so he went back, you know, more or less to the roots of these things. Skip a few more photos, yeah. So passive organic production. Yeah, once again, the optimal conditions are essential. And yeah, basically you need this access to natural fertilizers and mulch. Idealistically, you're not even having to place it there. It's just that you would need to combine, I think, they've got like 10 different species of plants that they sort of replanted as well, that as they sort of keep growing, naturally create mulch for the ground and just sort of lay it on, and, you know, in a very sort of slow process, you know, a kind of environment that takes, you know, 10, 15 years to recreate in sort of a small scale. Okay, so in conclusion, well, Sylvia made a few points we sort of would like to elaborate on a little bit. Yeah, conventional agriculture will treat the soil as a mineral, as chemical products that, yeah, you're either putting in fertilizers, pesticides, you're rebalancing things, maybe growing species of, species of plants that shouldn't really be growing naturally in that environment. Yeah, and then you've got your organic farming will treat the soil as a living organism. So yeah, you won't just need the minerals dumped in through the soil and the plants sorb it up. Basically, you've got actual, you know, worms, all these things doing all the work for you. So once you manage to maintain this like equilibrium, then yeah, you've got a certain way of actually maintaining or sustaining organic sort of production, but in particular to the coffee world here, of course. Yeah, so both active and passive organic have their places in the world of coffee production. And by that I mean it may be a small place, but essentially what you can see is happening here is a passive organic farm would need, like that farmer would need extra land and sort of be able to afford not to use that land for maximum production of anything, whereas active organic would have diverse crops that they can actually be, making income from many different species, and not just alone coffee, because the coffee prices and everything is not stable enough at this point in time to really maintain a healthy living. Yeah, and that's another thing too. Like through their research, once again, they were the farmers that maybe had the money and resources to research and put these things into place. But they're now actually managing several farms, and like the farmer I showed earlier on, Celso and Gertrudis, they're approaching this kind of this methodology of coffee farming by sort of slowly implementing the practices that they have learned and researched, and slowly it starts to catch on to other farmers. So this idea of this scalability thing that we were talking about is actually working because other farmers are coming in as partners and then managing their own farm and producing basically a name for themselves for which they can actually sell their product through directly to coffee roasters in the other worlds, and sort of start to maybe even get the pricing that they need to maintain this. Yeah, okay, so just a few summaries that basically we were going to actually go through here. This is the first photo of the leaf rust here. Yeah, that's right. So the leaf rust, basically you will say to any farmer, don't use any of these pesticides, fungicides and whatnot, but how can you say to a farmer, you're not allowed to use a fungicide when basically a disease like this is going to basically wipe out 60, 80% of his crop. It has to be managed. You can't just say no, for no reason there should be any of these chemicals used. It's just one of these unfortunate things that that will wipe out a whole crop, and in the way things happen, if you suddenly don't have a crop one year, then you may not be able to afford to do anything the next. The whole system shuts down. Yeah, this next guy here, yeah, to basically see these people like Joel Hamilton here put really all his effort into maintaining this. Yeah, we can see that basically these coffee farmers need a lot of support in order to, in order to keep things going. Yeah, so to basically support a single farm like that, and then see actually for the next photo here, the typical way that commodity coffee is produced, where we're really playing with a very small minority of farmers here that need basically all the support they can get in order to, compete with something like this, or, the next photo, to produce the amount of coffee that's really necessary to be, a big player in this really quite, big commodity in the world. Yeah, we're talking, whole warehouses filled with coffee, whereas these guys may, fill half a container. So yeah, and yeah, back to the little warehouse here. Another shot of Celso Gertrudis here with. Did we just pass that one, Chris? The sort of scalability of this this kind of model is done in a much more smaller and local sense. So yeah. I think we're on different photos here. Anyway, basically that's basically the conclusion that, and where we're really working with our coffee sourcing at this point in time, to sort of spread the message about what coffee farmers are doing, and to really relay the information to you about what goes into your cup of coffee when you think that basically some of these things have all been certified and should be checked all down the line. To approach a relationship is going to actually probably create a little bit more support to the farmers to increase their profitability and sort of sustainability. So I think that's about it. I've got to, yeah. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
This is
Got a little lost there at the end, but I think I should probably start asking if there's any questions that anyone would have. Like, is there any notes, particularly maybe from the early parts where, yeah. Yeah, the question, yeah, okay. So the question is like, yeah, what are we doing here? Like, yeah, that's it. I guess like when we were talking about coffee sourcing, we really wanted to concentrate basically on the relationship we have with our coffee farmers. So basically, it's funny, but really some of our main, work is to really just spread the word and maintain a relationship to understand what they go through, to let our customers know what's going on with their farm and to promote their product. Coffee farmers these days, when basically you are checking the quality of coffee, how it's tasting in the cup, different pricing scales are adjusted. So say one farmer has to spend 3 times the amount, let's say, it costs 3 times the amount to produce that cup of coffee, but he won't always get that money because the cup quality doesn't come up that well. And that's sometimes just luck of the draw. I think the more farmers get involved with the production of their coffee, taste their own coffee, understand their drying processes, they will be able to maintain very high quality coffee for each year. So our job is to basically be with them, taste the coffee, communicate what cups we're looking for. And if we get really extremely nice tasting coffee, then we can actually pay them a lot more for it because of all that extra hard work. It's not just like, it's like anywhere. You don't just, buy the same product, let's say like the highest quality product that takes a lot more work to produce in any sort of situation, costs more. And that's basically what we're trying to regulate with our coffee farmers to make sure that that quality actually is maintained. Because I think sometimes it gets a little crazy in the coffee world. In the past, we've seen, places like Yemen or Jamaica suddenly just sell coffee for extremely high prices because someone got an idea that was really good coffee. So suddenly they all start planting this weird species of whatever they did, and let's just say that suddenly the quality crashes because it hasn't actually grown and stabilized with a real true understanding. So what we try to do is probably just that, to work with them, taste with them, and make sure that we are building, I think, a business together in a way that they actually can benefit from the increased quality as well as us. So when I talk about green bean buying, that's pretty much, this is some of the big processes. I went much more on a tangent about what they're going through in Brazil, but that's basically our job. Yeah. Yeah, so answer, yeah. Anyone else? Let's get this guy off stage. Yeah, thanks.